are at Revitalize and Replant, and we've been going through a three-part series. I'm with Kevin Ezell, the president of the North American Mission Board, and this one, Kevin, is both my favorite and my stress point. You know, how can it be both of them? It's about evangelism because it is something that is near and dear to what I believe the church should be doing. I think the Bible's pretty firm on that one too. But also it's my stress point because we're looking at churches around North America. Just to be clear, these churches are not that we've looked at are not global. We'll do that later. And over 90% of churches have no type of evangelism initiatives at all. And
Right.
It's kind of hard to be evangelistic if you don't have evangelism. You know, it's crazy.
All right. You have to be intentional, you know?
Yes.
And what the sad thing is, our churches aren't even pretending to be intentional. I mean,
Yes.
used to, people at least talk it, but my word, there's so many opportunities and so many easy ways to be intentional in helping your people. It's all about making disciples. I mean, it's a very basic part of making disciples. And sadly, churches are skipping it.
And you're right to use the often used metaphor. There is a lot of low hanging fruit that's out there, and we're not even doing that part of the harvest. But you know what did Jesus say in Matthew 9? He didn't say, "Well, let's pray that we'll find some prospects." He says the fields are ripe, the fields are ready. Pray that the Lord will send His workers into the fields. It wasn't a problem with the potential of a harvest. The problem was harvesters, and we don't have those. That's still true today.
Oh, absolutely. And, again, that's the purpose we do everything. I'm convinced that people are more interested in hearing the gospel than we are in sharing it.
That is a profound statement. That is tweetable, repeatable, and even if it is wordable, it is edible. Yeah.
No, but you know as well as I do, you fly. I mean, people are very open to casual conversations everywhere I go, and they're much more open to talking about personal things. It's amazing how quick people will share personal information with you, and
totally agree.
Those are easy on-ramps to have a spiritual discussion.
So last night I was on my balcony, and I'm at the beach on vacation. And a lady, Nellie Jo was with me on the balcony. Lady next to me on the balcony introduces herself because we can see each other clearly. And she says she's from Nashville. I said, I'm from Franklin. Oh, she says she works at Vanderbilt. And so we, a lot of commonality there. Within 3 to 4 minutes, because my sons are pastors, that was my segue. Yeah, my son lives in the Nashville area. He's a pastor in Spring Hill. Within just minutes, we were having a gospel conversation. Just within minutes.
Same thing happened to me on the plane the other day. Sat down by a guy, and he was retired, and we got to church really fast, or spiritual things really fast. He said, "Hey, by chance, do you know a guy named James Merritt? I love hearing him preach on." I know him, and I said, "Hey, let's do." I FaceTimed James real fast. I said, "James, this guy's a big hero of yours," and it was just a great opportunity. We had more fun.
Oh gosh! And James was right there, ready to talk. Probably started preaching to him. Now, brother, let me tell you this: you need to know Jesus.
Well, it's the first time he was like, "Hey, I don't mind you calling me, but FaceTiming me, that's a little weird." That's the guy wanted to see it. Yeah.
That's great. Well, this has been a 3-part series. We've loved doing it. How you can be the best church leader in 2027. We're looking 5 years ahead to do the things you need to do in 2022 so that your church will be healthy. And this part 3 is bring back the priority of evangelism. So let's get into what do we do to bring back the priority of evangelism. You, particularly if you are a pastor, number one, let your church know that you have a personal priority for evangelism. I don't know if there's many things more important than that, Kevin.
No, absolutely. It should be the most important as you plan out your entire year and what you do with your time. It's amazing how small amount of time, but you got to intentionally make it a priority.
And as you said, if we have eyes that will see and ears that will hear, those are Jesus' words, but I'll use them. And if we are just prayerfully ready, God will put all kind of people in our path. It is to say it is easy is not an overstatement. It is easy.
Right. And we just have to prepare our people to take advantage of the opportunities that God does bring about. And then one of the best things you can do as a pastor is to feature those. Not you have to talk about yourself and your own experiences every week. Hopefully, you have them, but talk about, hey, Miss Cindy had this, or Brother Bill did this, or you can share all these different opportunities people had, so people say, look, it is something that just is in a natural flow, and to use your workplace or your business or a school, those opportunities come every day, absolutely every day.
They do. And if your church knows that you have evangelism as a priority, it will then begin to become a part of the culture of the church. But it has to start with you. Most of the time it has to start with you. Here's a
Right.
bit of research we had leading into number two, Kevin. Church Answers, we've been looking at churches that have been effectively evangelistic for about 3 years now, but particularly in the post-pandemic era, the post-quarantine era. Uh, we've found that churches that are really healthy in all areas, not just conversion growth, but discipleship, worship, and other areas, they have, whether it is intentionally or unintentionally, a cycle going where they make sure that there are around or at least two major evangelism emphases a year. So
Yeah.
it keeps the culture aware of evangelism. We have a lot of churches that do what we offer called Pray and Go. That's not the only one. I don't mean to just plug our product, but it's where someone goes into the community. A church members go into the community. They pray for a home, and they leave a door hanger that says, "We prayed for you." Just as just
Yeah.
as simple as that. And all kind of gospel opportunities come open, even if you don't go there intentionally meaning to talk to someone. But we found that churches, if they go about every 6 months with some type of evangelism emphasis, something, that their culture will change and the church will be more evangelistic. You as a pastor, I mean, you did that particularly at Highview in your last church with faith evangelism. That was your ongoing emphasis.
Mhm.
NAM has probably it's my favorite way to present the gospel, called Three Circles. And I have the app. What's it? The app On Mission. Is that right? I'm going to make
Right.
sure I get that
Mhm.
right. So you've always led strategically to make sure evangelism is at the forefront. We're not seeing that, Kevin, in the few churches that are doing it. That's what we're seeing. To at least two major emphases a year.
Yeah. And every pastor can sit down. There's a lot of things you can't plan for 3 to 5 years out, but continually educating and keeping in front of your people, this is something you can do 3 to 5 years out, and to lead them through, if you're going to lead them through faith or three circles, or, I mean, there's all sorts of opportunities. My word, I used to love Billy Graham tract. It was one of the first things I always used as um, and I'd buy a ton of those things and just teach my people how to use the Billy Graham tract. And nothing else, you know, when you leave them in certain places, always with a very, very big tip, but
Yes,
we
don't
just
don't untip, don't tip with the
constantly,
track only.
no, my gosh, but just to constantly keep it in front of your people, and that's one way of doing it. You say, well, we're this. Even when we did faith, we also purposely had other trainings in different ways. Even if it's apologetics, hey, look, we have a lot of this particular um, uh, group in our area, and how do you deal with Mormons, or how do you communicate with different faith groups? And it, it you've just got to be intentional and strategically plan, as you said, at least two a year.
Yeah, and that is at least. That's not a lid on it, but at least two a year. Because if something goes longer, something goes more than 6 months without an emphasis, the culture begins to go in a drift away from evangelism, and that's why we're watching these churches. Some of them have quarterly emphases, but the word that you mentioned at the onset of this is intentionality. You have to be personally intentional for evangelism, and you have to lead your church to be intentional evangelism. Evangelism is a supernatural move And if you just don't do anything, the natural takes over and you drift away from evangelism. So I loved your emphasis, Kevin, on intentionality, both personally and for the church.
Yeah. Well,
So
there's no excuse for a pastor not to prioritize.
say that again.
There's just no excuse for a pastor not to prioritize it. It's one of the most simple things they could possibly do.
It happens with life. It doesn't happen because you have to add something to your calendar. I'm sitting on a balcony
Yeah.
on vacation. Somebody introduce myself. There we go. Have that opportunity. Okay. Uh, a third thing that we put on here is inviting people to church can be indirect evangelism. I won't call it direct. I think of a direct evangelism where there is some type of gospel communication taking place. But for goodness sake, some type of inviting of people to church on a regular basis where hopefully they'll hear the gospel from the pulpit, hear the gospel in their group, whatever the case may be. Inviting people can be something on that cycle. Maybe it's not a part of the evangelism cycle, but it's a part of the outward cycle of the church as well. So you were good at that, at to have you, and I know you've emphasized inviting as a method of at least getting people to hear the gospel.
Right. And you know what we found at NAM? We focus on sin relief, a lot of the mercy, compassion. There's people out there who are not believers who still want to help people. And what
Mm.
we found is one of the very best ways, it would be a disaster relief site or any type of mercy, compassion ministry. They'll come alongside and help. But as we're helping, we obviously share the hope of why we do this. It's just a part of who we are. So to help people and then combine it with the hope we have in Christ and the reason we do it is also, it's crazy to think those are evangelistic opportunities. So to invite them to church, yes, but you can invite them to any type of these outreach events. And people often forget, even a disaster relief site, we have people every time we have a disaster, we have people there serving that end up coming to know Christ.
Hey, it's been a while. It's been like 12 years, but 12 years ago, Nashville had what they call the 1,000-year flood, and my house got flooded as well. And it's kind of weird when you go into the garage and you cannot see your car because it's underwater. That was my garage, and all of a sudden, people started coming once they could get back to their home. People started going house to house, and I ended up joining the group. I didn't lead the group, but I joined the group, and they were going and just cleaning out garages because there was so much mud in it, so many dead animals, and all kind of other things. And found out that the guy who started in the neighborhood was a believer, and he was
Yeah.
using the opportunity to have conversations. I can't take credit for it, but he started asking people, "Hey, where you go to church? You're cleaning up mud," and he begins those conversations. I love
We've found one of the things, providing fire alarms in underserved areas for apartments, or to go and say, look, we want to install this, and we're installing them. You have to have some protection so that you don't just let a stranger in your house. But it's amazing, looking for little needs and meeting needs just like that opens the doors to so many other opportunities. So
It does. It does. So we're going through a three-part series, how you can be the best church leader in 2027. We're looking 5 years forward. What are some of the things that you need to be doing today in order to be that kind of church leader 5 years from now, or probably two, or probably three? Five is not a magic number. And we're ending this while bringing back the priority of evangelism. Now, here is another one that I did not do when I was a pastor. Now, when I was a pastor, there was no internet. I don't even think there was electricity when I was a pastor. It's been a long time ago. But I started new members classes in my church. Now, to put that in perspective, Kevin, back when I started my first new member class, there were hardly any churches that had new members classes. It was considered radical. In fact, I got pushback. Well, if you're saved by grace, how come you have to make them go through a membership class by works? And so I had to deal with those kind of issues. But let me tell you what I did not do. I did not have a clear presentation of the gospel in my membership classes. I was assuming that everyone who wanted to be a member was already a Christian. And I have found out that that is far from the case. In fact, I
Right.
was so off, I probably missed a lot of opportunities. You can evangelize in your new member class, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. And and additionally, we had, our student pastor, before we would take kids on trips, would have them write out their testimony, the kids. And it
Mm.
was amazing. In writing out their testimony, revealed that they really did not understand the gospel and did not have a relationship with Christ. And so I think you take a membership class or any entry point, any opportunity at all to help people think through their faith and to address it, because you're right. Some of these people they've been baptized in church, but not really they don't understand the gospel as they should.
It's a great opportunity. This is another shameless plug comment, so I'm sorry, but I have a book coming out in September, October. I'm not sure, and it's simply entitled "I Am a Christian," and it's the same book that you use for a new Christian and you use for a new member class. So
Yeah,
it's if they're going through the new member class, it tells them what it means to be a part of the church, but it tells them what they need to know about the gospel. If they're a new Christian, it tells them what the gospel is, but now you got to get involved in church. So kind of
exactly.
combine both. I'm trying to learn from my mistakes, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. Just think of where you could be if you'd read that.
Golly, yeah.
You could have made something really useful of your life, Tom. I mean, it's amazing.
Oh, I could have made some. I could have done better. I know that. I know that
No,
beyond a
but
shadow.
really though, those very beginning steps, we skip over those, and we're not properly developing and discipling people as we should. And I look back at my own parenting failures often and thinking, man, how could I have done better,
Oh yeah,
with kids at certain ages.
yeah.
Because
My sons tell me that all the time. You sure could have done
yours
better
turned
here.
out
Son.
okay.
They turned out okay, but they remind me that Dad, you're wasn't perfect. Uh,
Yeah.
this one you've mentioned on past podcasts. Understand the inverse relationship between age and receptivity to the gospel. We've got all kind of research that demonstrates this, but as a general rule, you're more receptive to the gospel when you're younger than when you're older. So if you are not evangelizing older children who understand and youth, you are missing the prime opportunity of many people's lives. You got it, Kevin. You got it.
Right. Well, no, absolutely, and that's why we're focused on the from college age. Yeah, we have it for everybody, but from college age down, even as we plant churches, um, they're much more aggressive and much more open to the gospel. And any room you survey, the overwhelming majority, accept Christ before the age of 23. And so
Yes.
we've got to do. That's why, as your investment in camps all over North America, and in this time of year, when you have the opportunity to have the kids to walk them through the gospel and help them understand it and help them develop in their faith, these are very critical, very critical.
So let me give you a scenario, Kevin, because this is a very real scenario. A pastor comes to you and says, "We are not doing any evangelism in our church. Where do I start? And help me because I don't know anything about this. I mean, some of them may not be that blunt, but that's really where they are. We don't know
Yeah,
what to do. Talk to me as if you're talking to that pastor.
yeah. I'd say I would change your pronoun. You're probably right in the we, but I would start with the I
Good.
or the you. You do it. If nobody else does, pastors talk about their churches not doing certain things, but then when you really peel back the onion, they're not doing it. So I say, look, you do it, and then hopefully maybe go take somebody with you, and then just gradually work it up to where your leaders are doing it, and then it spreads. But the church is never going to do it if you don't model it. And I tell you, there's nothing more invigorating than being able to preach on a Sunday and knowing that you're going to be able to present a person you did lead to Christ that week, or you're going to baptize someone, and as you do that,
Mm.
tell the story and let them tell their story. And but it just if in my denomination, we have 47,000 churches supposedly. If every one of those pastors, led one person to Christ, one more person to Christ, you're talking about 50,000 more people. I mean, that's radically changes the baptism ratios period. And so we have
Yes.
thousands of churches that baptize no one, which means thousands of churches where a pastor did not in a year's time. And look, I get it. It's hard. My very first church, 7-0. We had 7 people. And you just get out and you do the very best you can. But by George, if you do that week after week, you're going to connect at least with one person in a year, for crying out loud.
You make me so jealous. You know that? You make me
I have
so
no
jealous.
idea why you would say that.
You always tell me about your 7-0 vote, and mine was 6-1.
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
he always gets the favor of people. And here is Rayner. Gosh.
Yeah. That was Nellie Joe voting against you, though.
Well, it wasn't, but it could have been. It's theoretically possible. It is theoretically possible. So I hope all of you have enjoyed talking to our audience that watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting app. Hope all of you have enjoyed, but also been inspired by this 3-part series about you can be the best church leader in 5 years from now in 2027. And I think it's been fitting that we end with the priority of evangelism, because that's really where the great need is today. We need leaders of churches and members of churches to step up and say, evangelism is going to be the priority. The last words of Christ before he ascended were, "You will be my witnesses." He didn't say you might be, or as it's convenient, do this. He said, "You will be my witnesses." And that last will and testament is what he has left us to remain faithful to the gospel. So thank you for listening to this 3-part series. Continue to listen to Revitalize and Replant, or just watch it on YouTube. And hey, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Give us a nice thumbs up or whatever you need to do there. Same thing on the podcasting app. Just do that so we can stay in touch with you. And we always thank the North American Mission Board, who provides this as a ministry to you so that you can get this information at no cost. So thank all of you for listening, for viewing, and for being a part of Revitalize and Replant. We'll help churches get healthier together.